You're hosting a barbecue, friends, family, kids running around the backyard. Your buddy steps off the patio, catches his foot on the edge of the pool deck, and goes down hard. He tweaks his knee. He ends up in urgent care that night. $2,000 in x-rays and a knee brace. Now here's the question nobody thinks about until it happens. Who pays for that? If you don't know who I am, my name is Jim Eddington, and my agency helps individuals and businesses with their insurance every single day. Most people think of their homeowner's insurance as the thing that pays if a tree falls on the roof or if a pipe bursts in the kitchen. That's section 1. That's the property side. But there's a whole other half of your policy that a lot of homeowners never look at until something goes wrong. Section 2. That's the liability side. And it covers two things that work very differently from each other. The first is personal liability. That's coverage E on your declarations page. Personal liability protects you when someone gets hurt on your property and you're found legally responsible. It covers their medical bills, their lost wages, their pain and suffering, and it pays for your legal defense if they hire an attorney and come after you. The second is medical payments to others. That's coverage F. Medical payments is smaller, quieter, and most people have never heard of it. But it might be the most overlooked piece of liability coverage on the entire policy. Medical payments to others is sometimes called good neighbor coverage, and the name fits. Here's why it matters. Your buddy who fell on the patio at the barbecue, his knee is banged up, he went to urgent care, he got x-rays, he's wearing a brace for a few weeks. Total bill comes to about $2,000. He's not mad at you. He's not hiring a lawyer. He just doesn't want to eat the medical bill for something that happened at your house. Medical payments can handle that. You file a claim, your carrier reimburses his medical costs, and nobody has to prove that you did anything wrong. That's the key. MedPay is no-fault coverage. It doesn't matter if you left a garden hose across the walkway or if he lost his footing on his own. The coverage can pay either way. Typical limits run from $1,000 to $5,000 per person, and on some policies you can get higher. It covers things like emergency room visit, x-rays, stitches, a knee brace, even ambulance rides if it comes to that. Here's what it does not cover: injuries to you or anyone who lives in your household. If your spouse trips on the stairs, that's a health insurance situation, not a homeowner's claim, and it doesn't cover injuries in a business context. If you're running a dog grooming operation out of your garage and a customer gets bitten, MedPay on your homeowner's policy is not going to help you. The real value of MedPay is what it prevents. A $2,000 urgent care bill gets handled quickly and quietly. Or your friend slices their finger helping chop vegetables in the kitchen. ER visit, a few stitches, same thing. Nobody lawyers up, nobody's relationship gets damaged. MedPay handles it. One of the big practical benefits is that it can resolve smaller injuries before they turn into bigger disputes. Personal liability kicks in when the stakes go up. This is coverage E on your homeowner's policy, and it works completely differently from the small no-fault medical payments coverage. Let me give you a scenario. Same backyard, same summer, your neighbor's 12-year-old comes over to jump on the trampoline. You've had that trampoline for a couple of years. The kid lands wrong, comes down on his arm at a bad angle, broken arm. The parents take him to the ER, he needs surgery, he's in a cast for weeks, and he misses baseball season. That's not a $2,000 situation anymore. That's an $80,000 situation. And when the parents hire a personal injury attorney and file a claim against your homeowner's policy, that's where personal liability coverage does its job. Personal liability pays for their medical expenses, their legal defense, lost wages, and pain and suffering. The difference from MedPay is that liability coverage requires fault. Somebody has to be legally responsible. In the trampoline scenario, the argument is that you owned it, you allowed a child to use it, and you didn't take adequate precautions. That's a premises liability claim. Here's what makes trampolines particularly risky. A lot of carriers treat them as an attractive nuisance. That's a legal term meaning the item draws children in, even kids who weren't invited. If a neighborhood kid hops your fence and gets hurt without your knowledge, you may still face liability exposure. Some carriers won't write a policy at all if there's a trampoline on the property. Others exclude trampoline injuries entirely or require a safety enclosure and a locking fence. Here's a real case out of Twin Falls, Idaho. A dad at a friend's barbecue was doing tricks on the backyard trampoline. He landed wrong and ended up paralyzed. That kind of claim can blow past standard liability limits in a hurry. Standard personal liability limits on most homeowners policies start at $100,000 and go up to $300,000, sometimes $500,000. That sounds like a lot until a paralysis case or a traumatic brain injury pushes well over $1 million in medical care, lost income, and legal judgment. Dog bites are one of the most common homeowners liability claims in the country. The average claim costs more than most people expect, and that number keeps climbing. Here's a scenario. You have a Labrador, friendly dog, great with your family. A delivery driver walks up to the front door, the dog gets startled and bites the neighbor's hand. The driver ends up in the ER, needs stitches, maybe some follow-up treatment for a minor infection. Your homeowner's liability coverage can respond to that. It covers the medical expenses, and if the driver files a lawsuit, it pays for your legal defense. And this is important. The bite doesn't have to happen at your house. Your homeowner's liability follows you. If your dog bites someone at the park, at a friend's house, anywhere, your policy can still respond. But here's where it gets complicated. After that first bite, your carrier knows about it, and what happens next depends on the carrier. Some will renew your policy but add a surcharge. Some will exclude your dog from coverage going forward, which means if the dog bites again, you're paying out of pocket. And some will non-renew the policy altogether. Certain breeds create challenges before anything even happens. Some carriers maintain breed exclusion lists. Some states have laws that prevent carriers from using breed as a factor. The rules vary, and your carrier's position on your specific dog may not be what you'd expect. We did a full video on animal liability and breed restrictions on the channel. It goes deep on what the laws look like in each of the states we write in. But the short version is this. If you have a dog, talk to your agent. Make sure your carrier knows about the dog. Make sure you understand how the dog is treated on your policy. And don't wait until a claim happens to find out your dog was excluded from coverage the whole time. Personal liability coverage on a homeowner's policy is broad, but it has boundaries. Knowing where those boundaries are matters because the gaps tend to show up at the worst possible time. Intentional acts are not covered. If you shove someone off your porch during an argument, your carrier is not going to defend that. The coverage is for accidents and negligence, not deliberate behavior. Liability arising out of business activity is generally excluded under a standard homeowner's policy. If you're teaching piano lessons out of your living room and a student trips on the stairs, your homeowner's liability is probably not going to cover it. If you're running any kind of business from home, talk to your agent about whether you need a separate policy or an endorsement. Liability from auto accidents is generally handled under your auto policy, not your homeowner's policy. Swimming pools are another area where coverage gets tricky. Pools are attractive nuisances just like trampolines. Carriers often require a four-sided fence with a self-latching gate, a pool alarm, or a cover. If those requirements aren't met, that can create problems with eligibility, renewal, or in some situations, coverage depending on the policy and endorsements. In one case, a jury awarded $19 million to a man paralyzed after breaking his neck jumping into a raft in a friend's pool. That kind of number blows past what a standard homeowner's policy covers. The pattern across all of these situations, trampolines, dogs, pools, home businesses, is the same. The coverage exists, but it has conditions. And the time to find out about those conditions is before something happens, not after. If your liability limits are $100,000 or even $300,000 and a serious injury leads to a lawsuit that exceeds those limits, you're personally responsible for the difference. Your personal assets, savings, home equity, and depending on the situation, potentially more, are exposed. That's what a personal umbrella policy is for. An umbrella sits on top of your homeowner's liability and your auto liability and extends your coverage by an additional $1 million or more. For a lot of families, an umbrella policy runs a few $100s a year. When you compare that to the exposure it covers, it's one of the better values in insurance. Here's what I'd suggest doing today. Pull out your homeowner's declarations page. Look for coverage E, personal liability, and coverage F, medical payments to others. See what your limits are. If your personal liability is sitting at $100,000 and you have a pool, a trampoline, a dog, or you host gatherings regularly, have a conversation with your agent about whether those limits make sense for your situation. Ask about an umbrella. And if you have anything on your property that a carrier might consider an attractive nuisance, make sure your carrier knows about it and make sure it's covered. If you want one of our licensed agents to walk you through liability coverage, make sure there aren't any gaps, get a quote. There's a link below. Subscribe to the channel. We publish most business days, and what we cover is for homeowners and business owners who want to understand their insurance before they need it, not after. Thanks for watching.